In my work with broadcasters, corporate executives, performers, anyone that's dealing with high-stakes communication situations, there is always this one moment that seems to be the same that happens to them, usually at the worst time. And that moment is they say to themselves, this moment matters, I can't screw this up. But what is their subconscious here? Screw this up. Because that's the way our brain works. And when that happens, people leave their heart and they jump into their head. And they get in their own way. They blank out, they act different. I've had people say during a job interview or on air, that's not the guy or girl that I know. That person just became somebody completely different. They're usually so much more relaxed or calm or just different. But now they're in their head. They're trying to be perfect. They're trying to be polished. They're trying to be impressive. And by doing that, what happens? They stop being fully present in the moment. Just being the person that they are, doing the thing that they love, playing, exploring, knowing why they got there, and just being in the moment and embracing it and enjoying it. Now they're in their own way and they can no longer do that. So I'm going to tell you a story that I love. Some of you may know this story about Joe Montana. So it was Super Bowl 23, 49ers against the Bengals, right here in Miami, as a matter of fact. And they were down 16-13. And we only had 3 minutes and 20 seconds left in the game. And they needed a touchdown to win. And the pressure, as you could imagine, was extremely high. Everybody was stressed out. They were in that moment of, how's this going to go? How are we going to make this happen? And all of a sudden, in the huddle, Joe Montana stops and he looks up into the stands. And who does he see? John Candy. Now, John Candy was a huge actor back in the day in the late 80s, so much so that he was a top box office draw even over Tom Cruise. And he points up and he goes, isn't that John Candy? And all the guys stop and they look up and they're like, hey, yeah, that is John Candy. And it was this funny moment where they all kind of chuckled and it just changed things. It broke the tension. It slowed things down, all of the stress and anxiety that was happening. He had an awareness of the emotional state of those guys in the huddle, and he knew he had to do something. And luckily, by chance, he looks up, and here's one of the funniest men in the movies that most people knew at the time. And it wouldn't have worked if it was maybe some other VIP or some dramatic actor, but it was John Candy, this light, airy, lovable, happy guy that everybody could relate to. And all of a sudden, it was just that reminder. It just took that 1 second to help them get out of that whirlwind that they were in that moment. So what he did was really genius because it really brought everyone back into the moment that we were just talking about. And in just a few seconds, he reminded them, we've got this, we've trained for this, let's just play. Let's just play. And they went on to get that touchdown and win the game. So that is a perfect example of confidence, leadership, and heart over pressure. So today I'm going to tell you many strategies, and it's not one size fits all. Some of you may be like, no, I've got this, I don't get stress, I don't get anxiety, but maybe you do. Some of you may be like, I put my heart into everything, and maybe some of you don't. I don't know what's going to resonate with who, but I hope that there is a little golden nugget for all of you of a takeaway for today. And if not today, maybe something you'll plant in the back of your mind that you'll find you'll use later on. So approximately 90% of people say that they experience stress and anxiety when they're dealing with high-stakes communication situations. So odds are pretty good it's going to happen to us, especially when something's really important to us and when we really care. When I work with media clients that are going to go on air and they tell me they're not nervous, I get concerned. Because then I'm thinking, are they going to be a dud? Do they have no fire in their belly? Do they not care about this? And unfortunately, usually that's the case. They fall flat, they're not a spark plug on the set, and it doesn't go so well. So a little bit of that adrenaline makes us sharper. It's that fire in our belly that we need. I met Helen Hayes years ago when I worked for a local station, and she was this legendary actress of stage and screen. And I was really young at the time, and I said to her, how do I stop, this anxiety or this stress and this adrenaline? And she looked at me, she goes, honey, when I stop doing that, put me in my coffin, because that means I'm done. I've lost my fire. I've lost my passion and my energy. And for a 20-year-old kid at the time, I was like, wait, what does she mean? And I learned later on, very much so, what she meant. So studies show that stress and anxiety can decrease our cognitive and language skills by as much as 70%. That's a huge deficit. So that means when we feel like we're blanking out, we're having that out-of-body moment, we're not feeling right, that's actually happening. So it's not just affecting our cognitive skills, it's affecting the way that we communicate and our ability to have the right words and to communicate with others in the moment, and even our internal communication with ourselves. So anything that we can do to find that calm and confidence and that inner trust, we want to be able to work on in advance so that we can train our brains to go there when we need to in a high-stakes situation. And so many of my clients over the years were asking for these two things. They wanted to feel calm and in control, not a low-energy, lackluster type of calm. I mean, just that inner trust of, I've got this, I'm steady, I'm in good hands with myself, so that other people can feel like they're in good hands with me. And then they wanted to feel confident and not have that self-doubt and question themselves. I work with so many guest experts that have to go on the air, and they might not be people that want to be in the spotlight. They could be an author, they could be a doctor, they could be anyone that, again, is behind the scenes, but they have to go in front of the media to advance whatever thing it is that they're working on. So they then feel like, I need to feel confident. So I put these two words together because it's what kept coming up throughout decades of training different people. So it's really a peaceful power. It's a power that you're in control of. When we're agitated or rushed or when we're pressured, we don't think straight. We don't make great decisions when our mind is in that 70% deficit, right? So when you're calm, you make better choices and you can think straight, which therefore then you can trust yourself moving forward. So what state of confidence do you tend to find yourself in? I like to tell my clients, check in with yourself when you first wake up in the morning. How are you setting the tone for your day? Are you looking at 1,000 emails and bad news of the day and starting out launching into your day in a frenzied, overwhelmed manner? Or are you standing there or sitting there and saying, I'm going to set the tone, I'm going to get control of my monkey mind, I'm going to get control of my energy and what I want to do and what my goals are for the day, and I'm going to see it through in just 30 seconds. I do this before I get out of bed. I lay there, I say a prayer, I have some gratitude, I think about what I want to have happen on that day, not what I don't want to have happen. And then when I get out of bed, my foot says, thank you. And that's how I start my day. And when I don't do that, and I'm rushed, my day tends to be a little bit different. So the key here, and Brian mentioned it a few times, is really our mindset. There's so much that we can't control in this world. So much, pretty much almost everything. But the one thing that we have complete control over, that we have been given free agency over, is our mind. The thoughts we think, what we focus on, how we choose to use our mind. And you know, we don't think anything of people telling us to train our body and condition our body and get in shape. But how often do we think about training and conditioning our mind and really preparing it for the things that we want to have happen again? Because when we don't do that, it'll do its own thing. It'll remind us of all the negative, it'll go to the inner critic, it'll go to tricking us into believing, past failures, it'll bring everything up out of control of what we don't want to focus on. So we have to learn to be the stewards, the director of our minds. So how are you explaining things to yourself? How do you find that you tend to talk to yourself? And what are those stories that you're telling? Are you an optimist or a pessimist? I have a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm always pessimistic because it's realistic and it's going to save me. And I'm like, no, usually when we're optimistic, things go better. And we can change even if we grew up with a pessimistic family or parents or people that influenced us. We get to make that decision on a daily basis. And then what are we visualizing? I come from media. I come from this background where images and visualization is so important. And if I had you all close your eyes right now, you could probably tell me how to get to your house, get into your house, find your kitchen, go into there and find the butter knife in your drawer. And I wouldn't need you with me. That's how powerful our mind is. And look around this room. Everything that you see that's not human or of nature was first an idea in someone's mind. that's incredible to me, because that means that we can manifest situations, things, all kind of things, and we don't realize just how powerful our mind is, because it's one of those things we take for granted, like breathing. I'm taking a breathing certification because you're going to learn a little bit later on. We don't breathe correctly after a certain age. But it's like, wait, I don't need a class to breathe. I don't need a class to control my mind. But all of these things to grow our mindset, to grow the abilities of our tools that we have and our communication tools are something that we want to work on all the time. So we will communicate on the outside based on what we're doing on the inside. All of our interpersonal skills, all of our communication skills, and all of our relationship skills all start first from within. That inner world affects everything on the outside. And so often, we're like, oh, I don't meditate, or I'm not going to sit there and spend time. I've got too much to do. But being in that moment of silence, which, by the way, is the greatest gift we can give anyone in a memorandum, right? Memorial, is something that we hardly ever give to ourselves. To just really sit and think and visualize and plan, to take those moments throughout the day, or even once a day, can really have a profound difference. So studies show that 80% of humans' self-talk is negative. This is a crazy statistic. This means that the majority of time we're thinking, what can go wrong? What if I screw up? What if something bad happens? And this is a survival mechanism. I get this. It makes sense. We're going to a primitive place. I find that people that are highly intelligent have this really strong survival mechanism. But unfortunately, it doesn't serve us well, because we're always thinking, what could go wrong? Worst case scenario. And while it's good to plan and we have to think things through, most of the time it works against us. And we need to just be aware of that we can control that and flip that switch. And Brian was talking about that earlier of, forget the negativity. How can I be solution oriented? How can I look at this in a positive way? So this is the mental screen that I was talking about. And you are the director of this screen. But watch what you do. When I work with clients, I can't tell you how many times they see themselves failing. They see things going wrong. They see things in their mind's eye of what they don't want to have happen. I had one client recently that was going to be on a panel like this. And he gets really nervous all of the time doing it, doesn't do it that often. And I went through an exercise with him where I sat there and I just talked him through it. I said, close your eyes. I want you to see yourself getting to the panel, seeing yourself and feeling yourself confident, having it go well, having the answers, being conversational, and then even seeing it all the way through to getting great feedback on the other end. Do you know at the end of that sentence, that exercise, he started filling up? And I was like, what's going on? And he said, that's the first time I've ever seen myself go through beforehand, watching everything successfully. He goes, usually I'm always thinking, how do I protect myself? How do I think through worst case scenario? It's the first time he used that skill to create things that he wanted to have happen, rather than trying to avoid the stuff that he didn't. And what we focus on expands. Have you ever gotten a car and you didn't notice it a lot on the road, and then suddenly you get that car and you see that car everywhere? That's because now you're focused on it. And so often we're focusing on what we don't want. We're fighting against something. We don't want this, we don't want that. We're going to get more of that because our mind and our subconscious goes to what we're focusing on. So if you want good things to happen, if you want to create things for yourself and for other people, focus on what you do want to change and what you do want to have happen. Because now you're programming your mind to look for things that are going to align with that, rather than aligning with the things you don't want to have happen or the negativity. This is hugely powerful when we make this switch. And studies show that over 60,000 thoughts run through our mind every single day. 60,000. And if 80% of them are negative, holy cow, right? So how we respond to our thoughts is the key. And someone once said the most important thing we will ever hear is what we say to ourselves. Because we're constantly talking to ourselves, and then we're also talking to ourselves about what you think of me, about what that person just said, about what this situation means. We're sifting through all of these things around us that are external, but we're the ones still explaining them to ourselves. And we need to watch how we're doing that. Are we doing that in a positive, empowering, constructive way, or are we doing it in a way that's going to work against us? So we don't live and operate in a world as it is. We live and operate in the world as we are. So someone once said that if you're going to squeeze an orange, what's coming out? Orange juice. If someone's going to squeeze you under pressure, what's coming out? What's deep inside? What are your constant thoughts? What is that state of confidence that you normally have? That's what's going to come out of us, because that's how we are walking through the world, all based from that inner world that I've been talking about. So what color is this piece of paper? Okay, what color are the tablecloths? What color is a fresh blanket of fallen white snow? And how about a pea stove? White. What do cows drink? Okay, a couple of you said milk. All right, so Malcolm Gladwell wrote this great book called Blink, and he talks about how we make these decisions in just a split second based on assumptions. You see, I was setting you up there with the white, and then you're thinking milk, right? So kudos to those of you that said water. I had one person on a speech challenge me and said, well, baby calves drink milk, their mother's milk, and I said, yes, but I'm talking about cows, not calves here. So life is all about how we see things. Some of you are going to see this gentleman looking straight at you, and others are going to see his profile. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Right. So if you can't see one or the other, really stare at it a little bit longer. But it's amazing how we can see differently just based on our perspective. And we do this every day with the people we interact with. We do this with problems and situations that are up against us. And usually the problem isn't the problem. The problem is how we're looking at the problem, right? So how do you show up daily? Let's talk about having confidence daily. How do you build your interactions and your relationships? You are always attracting and connecting. Whether you're on a job interview, or you're in front of the media, or you're in coaching, or you're in the middle of a game, we don't realize that we're always setting the tone and telling people about ourselves. So you could be networking and out meeting people that you might later be considered for a job or meet, and they've already established some impressions of how we've shown up in the past. So we need to keep that in mind. Are you approachable? Are you accessible? And do you have a welcoming energy and spirit? And look, I get it. We all have good days and bad days. We have days where we're frustrated. We have days when we're not on our game. But we need to know when we're interacting with others and when we're out there, we need to control that. We need to leave whatever's going on at the door. And then when we walk in, we need to show up with that welcoming spirit and that positive energy. Because again, only we can control that. And we've got to bring that into our interpersonal skills, our communication skills, and our relationships. We have to be able to turn that on and off for our own well-being and success. Does your passion and heart run through everything that you do and say? Because remember, again, everybody is constantly getting a sense of who you are based on how you show up and how you present yourself in situations when you don't even know or realize it counts. So let's talk about some roadblocks to confidence. So one of the biggest obstacles is self-centeredness. And I know this sounds terrible because none of us like to think that we're self-centered, right? But if we're seeing and responding and relating to everything from our own internal perspective, that is incredibly self-centered. It's just the nature of how we are as human beings. But how can we counteract that when we're in a pressured situation? That's when we want to be other-focused rather than self-focused. So when I have people that are getting their own way and they're stressing out about public speaking or being in the media or on a job interview, I'm always like, stop worrying about what will they think of me and start thinking, how can I be of service? How can I help? How can I show up like the solution, or at least show up with tools and skills and a background that might be able to contribute in some way? You know, this is a huge difference when I work with performers and they have to go on auditions, and I'm like, if you're going in desperate for that job, you're not going to do good. They can feel that and smell that before you even walk into the room. But if you really do your due diligence beforehand and prepare when you walk in that room and really believe that you've got something to offer, that's something that's going to be of service or contribute or be the solution that they're looking for their problem, man, what a different energy that is. I want to meet that person. I want to interview and audition that person because it's just a completely different energy. And then I feel like it's more about me as the person looking for someone like you. Because if it's the All About You show, whether it's broadcasting, performance, or what you do, that's a turnoff, right? None of us like to meet that person that it's the All About Them show. But when we feel like they care and when they're interested and they really want to be part of what we're part of, that's contagious. So 50% of our lives are spent somewhere else. So studies show that literally we're either getting lost in what happened yesterday and carrying it around like luggage and trying to correct it, trying to fix it, or we're in the future thinking about what could go wrong, how am I going to pay the bills, how am I going to keep this job, what if something bad happens. We're constantly getting out of that present moment. And Dale Carnegie wrote this great book many decades ago called How to Stop Worrying and How to Start Living. And he talked about this concept of living in date-tight compartments, where he said that any person can just get through one day. But the problem is that when we've got yesterday, today, and tomorrow all simultaneously wearing on us, that's too much for anyone to bear. And how often do we do that to ourselves? Because you know what? Yesterday's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And tomorrow is not a reality until it happens. So all that is really reality is the very moment you have in front of you. And if you can be fully present and just be right there right now, you're going to be so much less overwhelmed in anything that you're doing. So a UPenn study analyzing the worry journals of men and women found that after journaling thousands of people, 91.39% of their worries never actually came true anyway. And of the small percentage that it did, they reported that it wasn't as bad as they feared it was going to be. And that 25% of their day was taken up by worrying about worrying and worrying about all of these worries. So the next time you're worrying about something, and I have to remind myself of this too. I'm the mom of a 21-year-old son who I worry about. But, you know, if we know that 91% of stuff we worry about actually never happens, boy, is that freeing. Boy, does that kind of, you know, free up some empty, from some headspace there for us. So let's talk about confidence reaching your goals. What is your why? Why do you do what you do? Simon Sinek kind of coined this term many years ago about why am I here? Why am I showing up? Why is this important to me? What is my why in any situation? There's this great story that Dr. Norman Vincent Peale used to tell in one of his sermons. He was literally the guy that wrote the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And he talks about the analogy of a baseball, how the red thread runs through the baseball, and it can hold that baseball together, whether it is, you know, hit and knocked out of the park or thrown over 100 miles an hour at the batter, and still hold together. Only in very rare cases, you know, we've probably seen it come off, but usually it holds that ball together. It's an unbreakable thread. So I ask you, what is your red thread? What holds you together? Is it your family? Is it your faith? For me, it's definitely my faith. And definitely my family. When I'm encountering any kind of negative situation or anything that I'm worried about, I have to go back to that and say, hold on a second. Like, slow things down and remember, what is the thread that is holding me together here when everything seems like it's going off the rails? And if we can keep going back to that, not only does that help us with our why and our purpose, but it helps get us calmed down, it helps get us back in that moment, and it helps us remember what's really important. Because usually the stuff that we're stressing out about probably isn't going to mean a lot in 5 years. But we get ourselves all worked up when we don't remember to go back to what is our red thread. Who has heard of SFT in this room? So this is a sports psychology term that means see it, feel it, and trust it. And really what we're doing here is incorporating what we've been talking about so far. I need to see what I want to have happen. I need to use my mind's eye to create the world and the situations and the person that I want to be. And then I need to feel it. And this is a really important part of it. Going back to Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich book, and every personal and professional development book and speaker that you can imagine out there. Emotion is the key. Because when you feel the feelings of how you want to feel when you reach a goal or when you become something, that resonates with your subconscious and locks it in. So much more than if you just talk about it, just see it, don't really believe it. But if you can make yourself feel the feelings that you want to feel when you become, when you create, that in itself is going to lock it into your subconscious to where you will take actions subconsciously now moving forward. And then lastly, trusting it. Now that I know I've done those things, I saw exactly, I had that vision, and I felt exactly, I felt exactly, I could taste it and feel it and smell it and touch it. Now I'm locking it in, and now I can move forward trusting it. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how I did it. And I'm revealing some things here for you, so it's going to be a little interesting. So some of the times that I manifested this. When I was really young, back in the day, in my 20s, I wanted to enter a beauty pageant. And the reason I wanted to do this, I was working at a local station, and I had learned that in New York, all of the judges were major casting directors, agents, and production companies and producers. And I wanted to be in their world, and I wanted them to know about me. And then I also knew at the time that Mario Cuomo at the time, he had a youth drug prevention campaign where whoever was the title holder got to go out and talk to people about not doing drugs. And we had a family friend, a young person who succumbed to a drug overdose. And this was like my why. I was like, oh my gosh, if I can get this to happen, this could be like a platform for me and could help me with my broadcasting career. And I remember not even knowing about SFT at the time, but I remembered reading all of these books about manifesting and visualization. And I can remember being there, and I saw myself on that stage, and I saw myself doing well in the interview, and I saw myself winning ahead of time, so much to the fact that I started crying. And this was 2 days before the event. And a girl next to me was like, what's the matter? And I said, nothing, I'm just having some things that I was thinking about. It created it so real in my head. And then when it happened that day or two later, it was as if I had pre-programmed it and seen it in advance. And it was surreal because when it happened, I was just like, I can't believe that this is actually happening right now. But I felt like I had been there before. A second time was when I wanted to make it from being a local broadcaster to a national news anchor. And I remember going down into New York City, and it was going to be 2 auditions. And at the first one I got there, and I was nervous, and I just wasn't 100% sure of myself, but it went well enough so that they called me back again. And now they were going to put me through some more screen tests where I didn't know it, but they were going to throw some loops at me. So they start taping, but before I got there, I visualized that seat again. I was like, I see myself in that anchor chair. I see myself live on the air. I see myself succeeding and getting through whatever they throw at me. And I even see and visualized people coming up to me and saying, hey, I caught you on the air last night. It was great, and I appreciated the information. It helped me in some way. And then I got there that day, and all of a sudden, the prompter failed. They started putting audio in my ear that wasn't making sense, but I had to act as if I was live. And whatever they threw at me, somehow I got through it because I had already seen myself live on the air in a real breaking news situation to where I could handle anything. I trained my brain ahead of time to do that because I wanted that job. And I knew that having that platform could be a great thing for me in helping others to get information out there and to be communicating to others. And then lastly was writing my book. Do you know that I had to walk around with a baseball cap in my house that said author for about 2 years just to believe that I earned the right to call myself that? Because we all have that, imposter syndrome when we call ourselves something new for the first time that just doesn't feel like it fits. But in all 3 cases, I used SFT. I saw it, I felt it fully as if it was actually really real. And then I trusted it, and therefore I was able to trust myself and achieve some of the goals that I had. So it really comes down to, what do you truly believe is possible for you? Whatever your goal is right now, do you really believe that you can accomplish that? I mean, in your soul, in your depths, do you believe that is the right thing for you? Do you believe that you really are the person that can become that? This is a hugely important thing that sounds so simple. But man, if we don't truly believe that we are that person that is capable of that and that can earn the right to get there, we can't be there. So let's talk about confidence under pressure and in the spotlight. And I know that a lot of you may have to deal with virtual interviews before an actual interview. And ever since COVID, I am still amazed that most people showing up on Zoom and Teams still don't know how to show up properly. So I train people for this all the time, so I'm going to give you some best practices here. So please, for the love of God, look into that lens 80 to 90% of the time. Because what do we want to do? If you're in the box, I want to look at you because we're trained to look at human faces. I want to see you. I want to look at you. But you know what? The other person on the receiving end sees you looking away. That lens is the eyes of your viewer. And you want to maintain as much eye contact as you possibly can. This was easy for me coming from the broadcast world because I was used to staring at a black hole of a lens with nobody looking back at me. And I had to learn that that was a human being that I was connecting with through that lens. So I'm not saying you can't look down. You know, as a coach, when I coach people virtually, I do have to look down because I have to check out body language, facial expression, their presence, their framing, all these other things. But even when I'm listening to them talk, I'm staring in that lens because I want them to know that or feel like they have my full attention. So until some brilliant tech guy invents a floating lens that can pop around on each of the box faces, which I'm sure somebody will right now because they're going to make a lot of money doing that, we have to know that we're in this weird virtual world and we have to do things a little bit differently to connect properly. And don't read, don't be canned, don't be rehearsed. Think this is the same information that I would give you if it was a client of mine going on the Today Show for a quick 4 or 5 minute interview. Pick 3 of the most important things. Maybe 4, maybe 5, it depends on how long the interview is, but come in there with golden nuggets that you know you want to focus on. Boil it down for yourself, say, what are my key takeaways? And get really clear on what those are. And you can, the nice thing about virtual is that you can put little happy Post-it notes around the screen, not over the lens, of course. So you can just kind of glance, make it look like you're thinking and remembering and pondering, and you can grab some of those golden nuggets and little things that you want to remind people of. So I just want to show you this is what I'm talking about. Look at how awful that guy looks looking down the boxes. And look at how much better he looks looking right at that camera lens. I mean, that's a drastic difference. This is just a great example of that, but also don't backlight yourself. Look at how bad that looks. Don't go in front of a window. Don't go in front of bright lights. It's so much better. You're going to jump off the screen. And the framing is really important. So look, this is like I've just gotten a motor vehicle and they don't want to give me my license. They're not a nice person on the left. And now this guy is much more welcoming. Good headroom. He looks like a floating head, so I wouldn't do black shirt in front of a black background, but that's not why I chose this. But you want to frame yourself. We are used to seeing people in a broadcasting setting all of our lives. So we're expecting people to show up on camera like that, even on both sides, not sinking out of the frame, not too far away, a nice medium close-up, because if you're all the way back here, it's like, hi, I'm not really here with you, or we're really up into the frame. This is supposed to simulate and be in the place of me meeting you in person. So we want to make it feel like I'm as much one-on-one in person as if I was sitting across a desk from you. So quick Zoom checklist. Control your environment. Make sure that there's no buzzers and bells and ringing and dogs and kids and different things and air conditioning cranking on and off. Minimize things that are going to be distracting. Turn off your phone. Make sure that notifications that are not coming up on your email. You want to control your environment as much as you can. And set your tech early. When I log in, I have in my home office, I have a ring light in front of me that just stays there. I have a hat box, an old wooden hat box that I put my laptop on so that I am eye level with my lens, not looking down at it, not looking up at it. And I know that I can just walk in there and everything's ready. And then what else do I do before I get on there, especially if it's an important new meeting with someone? I log on to Zoom first by myself in my own meeting room. I check my lighting, I check my framing, I make sure I'm happy with how everything is, and then I log out, and then I log into the meeting where it really counts. When we launch in, when we were on camera, they always said, when someone counts you in 3, 2, 1, don't smile after 1, smile at 3. Get yourself into that tone and into that presence before you log in, before you walk into that interview door. You got to control your presence ahead of time so that you're not going from 0 to 60 in a split second. You are showing up ready, already setting the tone. And of course, great volume, project bright energy. There's a saying in broadcasting, no energy, no audience. And when you're showing up in a virtual platform, and that's that flat two-dimensional medium, you're having the same problem that we have as broadcasters. 50% of our energy is cut down. because I'm not getting your life force, I'm not feeling you, I'm not getting any of that in-person stuff. So we're already at a 50% deficit. So if you're not upping your energy and your passion and that bright, great voice and hello and that first hello, I'm so happy to be here with you, you're falling short right out of the gate. You do not want to start an interview like that. And at the very least, if you're not a big smiler or a big grinner, just at least look happy to be there. And if you're walking into a door or wherever, when I work with people that are going on television and the anchor is introducing them and the camera shoots over to them, sometimes they're just like this. And then all of a sudden they realize, okay, now I can say hello. They don't realize that that other camera just took a shot of them and the audience's first impression was that resting you-know-what face. So we want to be conscious of that. And then just listen. You don't have to have an answer and blurt it out instantaneously. That's not how we work. President Obama was so great with this. He would sit there, someone would ask him a question, he never answered instantly. He sat there for a second, considered it, and then gave his answer. So don't let anybody rush you through, because really it's probably just going to be you that's rushing you through. So let's talk about the interview. What is really our goal here? Their goal is to share something you love. You're talking about something that I hope you eat, sleep, drink, and breathe that, just lights you up. That's really what you want to share in an interview. Because I'm sure they probably already know your background, your resume, all of these other things, because otherwise you wouldn't be there. And they're, of course, have done their homework ahead of time. So what they're really looking for is, who is this person? And what is their why? And where is their heart? And is this somebody that I want to spend time with? Work takes up a lot of our days. And we want to work with people that we like and maybe even hopefully love. So you got to show up with that kind of an attitude and share your heart and not your ego. A little bit of ego is okay, because it makes us want to do a great job. It makes us take pride in who we are. It makes us want to be a person of excellence. But when there's no heart in there at all, ego then is a bad thing. So take a personal and professional inventory. So I talk about this in the book. I call it a confidence credit card. So when do we whip out a credit card? When we need some quick cash, when we need to get something taken care of. So I will have people do a little laminate card that will just maybe write down 4 or 5 of their greatest successes, or a couple of things that they feel really good about themselves about, or maybe a compliment that somebody gave them. And they'll keep it in their wallet. And right before an important conversation or an interview or something where they have to perform, many times they'll just look at it so it's the last thing they see walking into that situation. Boy, is that an energy changer if you can whip out a little card like that to remind you. Because it's so easy, we edit out all the great stuff and we focus again on those little things that worry us or give us self-doubt. So use a tool to remind you of who you really are. And be a storyteller. Don't we all love when we were kids in school, didn't we love when it was story time, whether they rolled in the video or somebody came in to be a speaker or the teacher was telling? We learn best by stories. So when you're thinking of your golden nuggets, incorporate, what are 3 of your favorite stories that really illustrate who you are and what your background is and, what your heart is and what was important to you. And bring those into your golden nuggets. Because there's really only 2 ways to give information. Just pushing it out at everybody, pushing it out, or pulling them into us with our stories. That's how we pull people in. That's how we've always connected as human beings, is through stories. And there is a saying in performance called get comfortable being uncomfortable. And once you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, it just doesn't throw you anymore. And know that adrenaline, that's all part of it. Like Helen Hayes had said earlier, I want to feel that adrenaline. Before I walked in here today, I could feel it, and I was like, why I'm feeling it? Because I wanted to do a good job for you guys. I wanted to, offer things that were going to be takeaways that you could actually use. It was important to me. And that creates that adrenaline that makes you sharp, that makes you be on your A game. So don't fight that feeling of stress and adrenaline, because you just have to have it work for you and not against you. So it's part of the process of getting ready. And it's that feeling. And when I feel that now and I'm about to go live, I'll be like, it's showtime. Where when I was younger and I was, less mature, that would rattle me. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm feeling this way. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be confident. I should be in control. And I'm like, no, it means it's showtime now. That's a good thing. I get to do this. I don't have to do this. And again, flip from what will they think to how can I inspire, educate, inform, share my passion, or contribute. Anytime that you're not feeling that way, you know you're being self-focused, and you can flip it to feeling those quotes there to be other-focused. And just a general attitude of, you know what, I want life to be better for others because I was there, because I showed up. So because I got my body language certification about 10 years ago down in DC, I'm going to go over a few quick things for you, and I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Amy Cuddy did this great study. She was working at Harvard, and she did this study about low body language energy and high body language. In just 2 minutes, she showed that when we use our body language in higher positions where we're opening up or using our space, we feel more dynamic. That actually helps our cortisol levels drop, which is our stress hormone, and our testosterone levels, which both men and women have, rise, which is our confidence hormone. But yet when we implode or we minimize our space, the opposite happens. Our cortisol level shoots up and our testosterone drops. So what are we doing when we're on our phone? We're in the implosion position. When we're on our laptops. And we don't even realize it because maybe we're not feeling low or down, but we're forcing our body because of our technology into these positions, and it is changing our physiology. And we need to know that. One of the Tonight Show hosts in an interview talked about how he paces back and forth behind the stage before the curtains open, doing the Superman pose just to get his physiology where he wants to be before he walks out into that curtain. And then just a little note on mirroring. When we are in sync with people, we do something called mirroring, and we don't even realize it. Look at how they're all kind of doing the same thing and lining up with each other. It's something that just happens. Now, and I'm not saying that you should use this to be manipulative, but you could use it a little bit to kind of create some of that sync when you're noticing how the person in front of you is using their body language. So let's talk about some signs of stress. Always fidgeting, swaying, any kind of eye darting, not being able to just kind of focus and again be fully in the moment. Any kind of pacifier, self-touch, fixing, adjusting glasses, touching, etc. All are little tells, biting the inside of the mouth or the lip, and pursing the lips. There's a saying in body language where it says, when we don't like what we hear, our lips disappear. And that means either what I'm hearing in here or what I'm hearing from you. And these are all things that happen before we even realize it, because body language happens because of our emotions, not because of the words that we're saying. So always know that I've got to get my emotions in check and get myself feeling right about myself in the situation, because that's going to show in my body language before I even open up my mouth. And just look at the difference here. My goodness. Nervous or overwhelmed people tend not to smile, and unprepared people tend not to smile. Who do you want to hang out with here? Who do you want to break bread with or have a beer or a cup of coffee with? This is the same person, but what a dramatic difference. So at least bookend it. If you tend to be a more serious or introverted person, at least the hello and the goodbye are always great appropriate places to smile. I like to say, show up like you're the host of a dinner party and you're inviting me into your home and you're saying hello. How are you going to make somebody feel when you first meet them? And then how are you going to send them on their happy way so that you hope you meet again? Those are always great places to work in the smile. And eye contact is so important because this is when we really connect with people. And that's why I was really putting emphasis on that lens on your virtual platform, because the eye contact is something that's all messed up there when we don't realize what we're supposed to be doing. But there is a 2 to 5 second rule. So you want to look at somebody for a little bit longer than 2 seconds. Otherwise, that eye darting that we talked about happens, or who's more important in the room that I want to talk to, or I don't want to look at you because I'm not feeling comfortable. And then 5 seconds starts to get a little long. Now it starts to become a stalker stare. And you're boring a hole into my soul. And I don't want that. So the good news is we have 40 facial muscles that have a lot of information in them. So if I want to make good connection with you, I might look at your lips for a minute, or then your eyebrow, or your nose. And there's all kind of information happening there. When my son was little, he said to me, Mom, sometimes when people are looking at me, like teachers or people, I don't know what to do with my face. And I knew exactly what he meant, because it's so weird when someone's looking at you and you're not responding, and especially if you're an immature young kid, it's like weird. You start twitching. You're like, I don't know what I should be doing here. So again, look at some of those 40 facial muscles. And if someone's talking for a long time and you don't know what to respond, just put your hand on your chin. In body language, we say, when you grab your chin, you're about to win. Don't I look very intelligent and inquisitive and very interested right now? I could just look at you and you could go on for an hour and I would look like I'm engaged like this, right? Okay, so let's talk about some voice. So let's just have a strong voice, and that comes down to the words that we choose to use. Instead of a less confident, I think, or I feel, just launch in definitely about what you want to say. The more clear and concise and compelling and definite you can be, the better. And when you have that game plan of those 3 to 5 golden nuggets in some of those stories, and you really hone that down and prep ahead of time, you're going to be a lot less likely to go off on tangents, which is really important. Because if it's only a short interview, if I've got somebody going on the Today Show for 3 to 4 seconds and they haven't made their plan, they're walking off that set thinking, oh my gosh, I wanted to say this, that, and the other thing. I'm so disappointed in myself. Let's not let that happen. Have those 3 goals and know that it's a two-way street. It should be a level playing field where it's a conversation. So you're not just there to answer Q&A. You're there to offer some stories, go back and forth, and also, you're there, if it's an interview situation for a job, to make sure that it's the right one for you too. So it's not just, I hope they like me. It's like, I hope I want to work with these people. I hope this is a good fit. I hope that I want to be here. So make sure that it's that two-way street. And I talked about earlier that pauses are okay. Studies actually show that when we pause, it's more of a sign of intelligence that most people feel, rather than a hesitation. Again, if it's a deliberate pause for me to think about what I want to say, project, and then watch that speed. Speed is always an indicator of nerves. Whenever we get nervous, we want to go faster. And the problem with speaking fast is that there's something called blending that happens in language. And that's why it's so hard when you meet somebody that might have an accent or might not, may have English as a second language, or if we're listening to a language we don't know, it just all sounds like it's blended together, because when we talk, that's how we talk when we're fast. And people can't get some of the things that we're saying. So always just that nice pace so that the words aren't all smushing together, but don't sound like, staccato, like stilted either. You don't want to go overcompensate. So as I mentioned earlier about logging into that Zoom ahead of time, that helps us trust ourselves. And please watch yourself. You can do this anytime. You can log into Zoom and hit record. Nobody and their brother has to know what you've been doing. You watch yourself back and you assess your own facial expressions and body language and voice and stories and things like that. And then you throw it away. And I know some people are like, I don't want to watch myself. I don't like how I look and sound. I feel like it's being conceited. No, that's your toolkit. If a plumber came into your house and didn't know what all their tools were, you'd be like, well, I'm not hiring this person again. Your communication skills, your body language, your facial, all of those things, that's your toolkit. And it's your responsibility to know how you come across and how you're received by other people. So please go on Zoom, record, throw it out, never have to show it to anybody again. And if you have an in-person interview, put a digital camera up, get somebody with their phone that you trust, and go through a mock interview situation with somebody and play it back over and over and over again, so that when you get in the real situation, you're not wondering how you're coming across or how you're being received as far as your projection or your confidence or the way your story's coming across. You've seen it. This is the single most thing that you can do to build self-trust, so that when you get in that situation, you're really self-aware in a good way. Not self-focused, not self-centered, but healthy, thorough self-awareness. So let's just talk about a couple of quick confidence exercises in natural calm. So there's something called anchoring, where Tony Robbins used to talk about this, where you can go in your mind actually during a situation where you're having success. So for instance, when I first started doing this and I gave a big speech to a large audience and it was going well, I just kind of tap on my belly a little bit. Nobody would notice. I'd just talk and I'd go like this because I wanted to anchor in that feeling of success. I wanted to anchor in that feeling of, wow, this is going well. I'm really feeling on my game. And I would just keep doing this so that the next time I got out into a situation where I felt a little less confident, if I went like this, oh, that would cause a little something to happen in my subconscious. And I'll tell you something, recently, I do a lot of medical continuing education live stream events for the medical industry. And talk about like getting in your head. They throw like medical terminology at me that I have never heard, and it's literally like learning a foreign language new every single time I do one of these live with everybody else who's physicians and doctors, and I'm like the hired help and I don't want to sound like it. And I had a issue about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. A lot of stuff was going on in my life. My husband has lost his job. Somebody was sick. Something happened. I was going through some stuff. I showed up to one of these live events and it didn't go so well. I could literally feel myself almost like having like a panic attack. Like I couldn't breathe. I'm like thinking, I'm live. I have to keep talking. I literally was talking without being able to breathe. I got off when we went to break and I went in the back and I was talking to the makeup girl and she's like, well, I couldn't really tell. Are you okay? She's like, let me get you a glass of wine. I'm like, no, it's the last thing I need. I gotta keep my head on straight here. But that just felt horrible. Well, the next couple of times that I worked for that client, guess what would happen? That got anchored. And I started worrying about that. And I'm thinking, this is one of my best clients. I need this job. I don't want to screw up for them. I always want to do a good job for them. It got to the point, just then, I could go on live national television after that to millions of people, no problem. It was that activating event whenever I get back in that situation again. So I happen to have a client named Grace Smith who does sports hypnotherapy coaching for clients. So I reached out to her. I didn't talk to her for many years, and I was like, Grace, is there anything you could do to help me out here? And she's like, I'm going to do a Zoom session with you. And what she did is she put me through a new anchoring where she had me say, go to a place where you find peace and strength. And there's this place in upstate New York that's this grove that's a very spiritual, religious place that I've gone with my parents over the years, ever since I was a kid. And it's always a place I kind of would go back to, you know, in prayer or in just when I wanted to center myself. And she said, as soon as she said, pick a place, and I did. And then she said, okay, now I want you to see it. I want you to smell it. I want you to feel it. So in all of that case, I could smell the dark soil in the forest. I could feel the wood on the bench. I could see the light coming through the trees. And she put me through this self-hypnosis, and then she logged off. Well, the next time that I went out to, I think I was in Michigan, doing one of these things, I'm thinking, oh my God, is this stuff gonna work? This is that client again. And I remember I got there, just one session, so I wasn't, hopeful. And all of a sudden, I felt myself going back there again. My heart rate went down. I was breathing better. I got control of my breath, and it went better, and I haven't had the problem since. So that's a really great example of anchoring, but that's something you can do to either lock in a good state of being or correct and erase and rewrite a bad one. Breathing, if you can get your breathing in check, that is going to help you first and foremost, because that's what's going to control your physiology. When we are after 5 years old, we stop belly breathing. We tend to breathe from our chest and from our neck and from our sinus area. When we fully expand and really open up the diaphragm, which is like a cummerbund, not only does that help control our heart rate and that pounding and that outer body feeling, but it brings more oxygen to our brain. And guess what? Now we can think straight. So get control of your breathing. And then everybody knows who Jerry Seinfeld is. Seinfeld, I was listening to an interview with him one time, and somebody asked him, how are you confident when you go out there to an audience? Because some of the comedy audiences are the toughest out there. They're hecklers. They think they're funny. They're like, make me laugh, funny man, or they're drinking or whatever. And they said, how have you handled that over the years? And he said something that I just thought was brilliant and beautiful and so appropriate for what we're talking about today. He said, before I walk out on that stage, I just decide, I love these people. I just love these people. And I'm just happy to be here with them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I walk out there saying, I love these people. And I was like, God, it's just so simple, but it's so effective and so real. So again, just stop analyzing and breathe. And the magic is also in the exhale. When we do that big belly breathing and fill our diaphragm and then we exhale, that's where we can excise and push out all the negativity. With my clients, I'll say, what are the things that are bothering you? And you can push it out with your breath. I'll say, breathe in and say calm and confidence to yourself and hold it. And then whatever you need to push out and get out of your brain, body, mind, and spirit, you can say those words and push it out with your breath. And again, this will clear your mind, get out the junk, and get you level set again with your breathing. And studies show that we cannot be happy and have gratitude and worry and anxiety simultaneously. So at the very least, when you're laying in bed in the morning and you want to set the tone for your day, what are 3 things that you're grateful for? If you're in a stress and anxiety position, and you're about to go something that you're putting a high price on, maybe think about somebody who's really struggling with something life-threatening right now, and have that, kind of level set you of, no, you know what? I am so grateful that I'm here breathing and healthy and I have this opportunity right now, because gratitude will 100% cancel out anxiety. So years ago, I coached a guy named Mark Thornton who had written a book called Meditation in a New York Minute. And he was a really stressed out Wall Street guy that was getting sick from his stress. So he started taking meditation classes, and he fell in love with it so much that he left the Wall Street job and started going into corporations just to coach and train people on this. And I was training him for his media tour. And he taught me this amazing, easy, quick exercise that's called the snow globe technique. So we'll just do an abbreviated version of it right now. But if you close your eyes right now and you picture a snow globe, we all know what it's like, all the stuff swirling around. I did this for about 5 or 6-year-olds a couple of months ago, and they said, oh, does it have to be snow? Can it be dinosaurs or Tonka trucks? I'm like, whatever is floating around in your head, see it swirling around, and now say to yourself, I'm going to start slowing it down. And I'm going to start doing that breathing I was talking about. Nice, full, deep breath, and that nice exhale. And now everything's starting to slow down. And now it's starting to fall to the bottom, like that nice, fresh blanket of snow that we talked about in the beginning. And I want you to go through this. It can take 30 seconds, a minute. It doesn't have to be much longer than that. But as you slow it down, and that snow settles and settles and settles, until you have that fresh, just blanket of soft, calm snow at the bottom of your mind. What's happened in that time? Your heart rate has decreased. You've slowed things down. You've been fully present in your body, mind, and spirit. And now the globe, which is your mind, is clear. And now with a clear mind, you can put on that screen the things that you want to have happen, instead of worrying about all of that to-do list and those millions of things that we all have coming at us all day long. And in case you need a quick fix, my clients that have really severe public speaking anxiety or just a lot of stress love this option. A doctor who was treating some patients for cancer had told me about this many years, and he said, for those that don't want to take anything that is addictive or that's like Valium or Xanax, lemon balm is a natural thing that you can get on Amazon. This brand is available on Amazon. You can get it at your local health food store, and it acts on the same receptors of the brain as things like Xanax and Valium. And it just takes the edge off. You can even use this to try to get back to sleep in the middle of the night. It's not going to feel like you took something or had a glass of wine, but you will stay sharp, and it simply just takes a little bit of the edge off, and sometimes that's all you need. It just goes right under your tongue, like if you've ever taken echinacea or anything under your tongue. All right, so when your moment comes next time, please don't go into performance mode. Remember that Joe Montana story. Go into that mode where maybe you laugh at something, you bring something up to yourself that's more human, that's more relaxed, that helps you play again, that helps you bring your passion back, to bring you into that moment. Please lead with your heart and know that we've all got egos, we've all got desires, we've all got things that we want to have happen. But when we do lead with our heart first, it just makes things so much easier to connect on a human level with other people. And I'm keeping myself honest here, make sure that I didn't go over my time, and I'm just about done. Be real, be ready, fill your mind with that purpose and passion and play that we talked about, and be other focused as we talked about. And then I will just end on saying, this freaks me out. There is no one in this entire world that has your fingerprint. I've researched this. There has never been a case in history in this world where they had a documented case where there are 2 people that have the same fingerprint. So this says volumes if you're a spiritual person of faith. But in addition to that, that means that no one can touch this world the way that you can. No one. The way that you interact with people, the way that you reach your hand out to others, the way that you touch your work, the way that you touch others, that's your DNA, your fingerprint that no one else can do the same way as you. But make sure it's connected to your heart as well, and that is a winning combination. So people may not remember everything you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And the way you make them feel is going to be based on how you feel about yourself when you walk into any kind of a communication situation. So the book, if you haven't picked it up yet, is in 4 sections. Everyday Confidence, just dealing with everyday stress and anxiety and overwhelm and just, getting yourself out there with the strongest presence that you can have in the world. Part 2 is Resilience Confidence. After perceived failure, after you went through something that was tough, how do you, kind of go down and then reemerge with force and new vitality. And then my sweet spot, Part 3, Communication Confidence. I talk all about what we talked about today in more depth: body language, voice, facial expression, interview skills, public speaking skills. And then lastly, if you liked the lemon balm in Part 4, all kinds of natural foods and remedies and different things that you can use naturally that help you find your calm and your confidence. So I wish you more heart and less stress and anxiety and much success, and it's been so wonderful to be here with you all today. Thank you so much, and thank you to Brian for inviting me.